He didn't ask for payment. He didn't ask for recognition. All he asked for was the chance to help. Damon Arledge was raising his daughter Phoebe alone after losing his wife during childbirth. He worked night shifts at a diner, patching roofs by day, struggling but surviving. Then one night, he signed a piece of paper that would change his life forever, becoming the living organ donor for a woman he'd never met. That woman was Ayanna Cross, heiress to a $30 billion fortune, but dying, slowly, silently, and alone. Hello, family. As we begin this story, prepare for something life-changing. This one is specially crafted for you. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below, because this storytelling family is where you belong. Now let's continue. The harsh flicker of fluorescent lights buzzed above, but Damon Arledge barely noticed. He sat rigid in a hospital corridor chair, legs wide, elbows on his knees, hands folded like a man in prayer. Across from him, curled into a torn cushion, 6-year-old Phoebe dozed with her stuffed fox tucked beneath her chin. Even in sleep, she kept one hand curled toward him, as if she knew her daddy was barely holding it together. It had been a long time since Damon stepped inside a hospital. The last time was the day everything fell apart, the day he'd lost Maya, his wife, in a labor room filled with panic and blood. That was the day Phoebe was born, and the same day Damon became both mother and father. Now here he was again, waiting for a surgery that had nothing to do with him, yet somehow meant everything. He glanced toward the sliding glass door that led to ICU room 27. Behind it, a woman he'd never met lay unconscious, her life in the hands of surgeons, and partly in his. He was the donor. A stranger's second chance was riding on his kidney. No one had paid him. No one offered favors. The match had been anonymous, but Damon had signed the release form without hesitation, not because he was a saint, but because he knew what it was like to lose something you couldn't get back. Rent was due. School shoes were tight. Groceries came from food banks and clearance aisles. Still, something about this felt right. Maybe it was the idea of saving a life that called to him, or maybe it was just one good thing he could give, even if everything else was falling apart. "Dad," Phoebe mumbled, stirring. He brushed her hair back from her forehead. "I'm here, baby. Go back to sleep. Are you getting another boo-boo?" He smiled faintly, just a small one. She nodded, eyes already fluttering shut again. Her trust was complete, and that made his chest tighten. "Mr. Arledge?" A nurse approached, her face soft. "They're ready for you." He rose slowly, careful not to wake Phoebe. "Will she be safe here? We'll have someone keep an eye on her, and when you wake up, she'll be the first person you see." He nodded and followed her down the corridor. Each step felt heavier than the last. As they reached the prep room, the nurse hesitated. Then in a low voice she said, "Her name is Ayanna Cross." Damon paused. The name meant nothing to him, yet it settled in his chest like a whisper he was meant to remember. The operating room was cold, sterile, too bright. He lay still on the table, IV in his arm, heart pounding in his ears. "You're sure about this?" a surgeon asked. "Just do it," Damon replied. "Let's get someone there tomorrow." And then sleep took him. Hours later, he woke groggy and sore. Phoebe was there, just like the nurse promised, sitting beside the bed, holding a juice box in his hand at the same time. "You did it," she whispered. "I told you you were brave." He smiled weakly. "Only because of you." The nurse came in and said the procedure had gone well. Damon nodded. He asked nothing about the woman in room 27. He figured if she made it, that was enough. 3 weeks passed. Damon returned to the grind, limping slightly but working anyway. Rent didn't pause for recovery. Bills didn't forgive charity. He'd taken shifts at Marlowe's diner, where the coffee was burnt and the regulars were bitter. Still, it paid. Phoebe came with him most evenings, sitting in the corner booth with crayons and a grilled cheese sandwich. She was his anchor, his reason. One rainy Thursday, he was refilling coffee at a window seat when the bell above the door chimed. He turned and saw her. The woman walked in without hesitation, like she belonged nowhere yet could command any room she entered. She wore dark jeans, a white shirt tucked loosely into a gray blazer, and carried no umbrella despite the rain slicking her shoulders. Her honey-brown skin glistened from the drizzle, her hair pulled back in a low, tight bun. But what struck Damon the most were her eyes, wide, calm, and unwavering. They scanned the diner quickly before landing on him. Damon froze, coffee pot in hand. Phoebe sat a few booths behind him, humming softly as she colored a picture of a house with 2 stick figures and a fox. The woman stepped closer. "A table?" Damon asked, voice cautious. "I'm not here to eat," she said quietly. "I'm here to meet someone." He frowned. "This ain't exactly a popular meeting spot." Her lips twitched. "I know, but I didn't want a crowd. I'm looking for Damon Arledge." He blinked. "That's me." She studied his face. "I thought it might be. You look stronger than I imagined." Damon's stomach dropped. "Wait. Are you—" "Yes," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Ayanna Cross." He didn't take it right away. He was still caught between disbelief and confusion. The woman who had received his kidney was standing right in front of him. No hospital gown, no machines, just a living, breathing reminder of the choice he made without expecting anything in return. I thought they don't allow contact," he said finally. "They don't. It took some convincing. And a very kind nurse who believes in bending rules." He looked over his shoulder at Phoebe, who was still engrossed in her drawing. "Can we talk?" Ayanna asked, voice low. He nodded, gesturing to the booth furthest from Phoebe. Once seated, he poured her a cup of tea and slid it across the table, his hands still trembling. "I didn't expect this," he admitted. "I didn't either," she replied. "But when I woke up, the first thing I asked was who saved me. The nurse told me your name, and that was enough." He tilted his head, trying to study her without making it obvious. She was nothing like he'd pictured, not fragile, not fading. She looked calm, yes, but also worn, as though life had been heavy, and she was still learning how to stand again. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said. "I didn't come to just say thank you," she replied. "I came to understand why." Damon leaned back in the booth, exhaling. "That's a long answer. I've got time." He studied her. "Honestly, I've lost people. I know what it's like to feel helpless. If I could stop someone else from feeling that, even just one person, it felt worth it." Ayanna's fingers wrapped around the teacup. They were elegant, but unsteady. She didn't speak for a moment. "I was dying," she said, "and no one knew. Not even the people who worked for me." "Worked for you?" She looked up, hesitant. "I'm not who I seem. I own a company, Cross Atlantic Holdings." Damon blinked, unfamiliar with the name. "We're in finance, energy, real estate. A lot of things, actually. It's a $30 billion company." He stared at her, silent. "I didn't want to be a headline," she continued, "or be pitied, so I kept it private. My father arranged the surgery, quietly. But it was you. You saved me, and now here I am in your world." Damon glanced out the window at the flickering diner sign. "It's not much of a world." She smiled faintly. "It's real. That's more than I can say for mine sometimes." Phoebe's giggle rang through the diner. Ayanna glanced toward her. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "She's everything," Damon replied. The moment hung between them, thick with something Damon couldn't name. He hadn't asked for this meeting. He hadn't expected it. But now that she was here, part of him didn't want her to leave. "I should go," she said, as if sensing his unease. "You came all the way here to ask me why I did it. Did I answer your question?" She paused. "Not completely." He arched a brow. "Then why leave?" She smiled. "I'll be back." And with that, she slipped out of the booth, nodded once, and walked into the rain without an umbrella. Damon stood watching her go. He didn't know it then. But that day was the start of something neither of them could have predicted. The day Ayanna Cross opened her eyes after surgery, the world felt foreign. Her mouth was dry. Her chest ached with shallow breaths. Light cut through the blinds, making her squint. Monitors beeped steadily around her. Tubes and IV lines fed into her arm. Her body felt stitched together, held by invisible hands she could not name. A nurse leaned over. "Miss Cross, you're awake." Ayanna licked her lips, struggling to find her voice. She whispered, "Who gave me life?" The nurse hesitated. "You need rest, please." Silence. Then the nurse leaned closer and whispered, "His name is Damon Arledge. He asked for nothing. Just signed the forms and showed up." Ayanna tried to speak again, but her throat burned. The nurse offered water. As she drank, Ayanna closed her eyes. The name lingered in her mind. Damon Arledge. Recovery was slow. Each morning she opened her eyes with one question playing in her head. Who is Damon? Her father visited, brief and formal. Her team sent flowers. Her assistant managed press rumors with vague health explanations. But none of it mattered. She'd been given more than a second chance. She had been pulled back from a place so dark, even her fortune couldn't reach it. And someone had done it willingly. 2 weeks later, she stood alone in her penthouse's rooftop garden. The city below buzzed, but up here, it was quiet. She clutched a slip of paper. Damon Arledge Marlowe's Diner, South Newark. It had taken one sympathetic nurse, one subtle text, and one promise not to publicize anything. She folded the paper slowly, slipped it into her blazer pocket, and made up her mind. When Ayanna walked into Marlowe's Diner, she wasn't the billionaire heiress. She was a woman searching for something real. The moment she saw him, apron tied at the waist, wiping tables, something inside her paused. He looked tired, yes, but grounded, like a man carrying the world without complaint. Then she saw the little girl in the corner booth. Phoebe, curly hair tied in 2 puffs, crayons scattered, a sandwich half-eaten. And her heart broke a little more. She'd received life from a man who had so little, yet gave so freely. She had to know him. Not just his name. Not just what he did. But why someone like him would choose to save a stranger with no promise of reward. Now, back in her suite, Ayanna sat by the window. She replayed his words, I've lost people. I know what it's like to pray for something that never comes. It echoed through her. She, too, had prayed. Not for money. She had that. Not for fame. She had that, too. But for meaning. For connection. For something that couldn't be bought. And somehow, she found it in a man who had every reason to say no. And said yes anyway. Rain tapped against the windows of Marlowe's Diner, rhythmic and steady. Inside, the scent of burnt coffee, mixed with grease and old vinyl. Damon moved through the narrow aisles between booths, balancing plates, refilling mugs, ignoring the dull ache still lingering in his side from the surgery. Extra crispy hash browns, one of the regulars barked, not bothering to look up from his newspaper. Coming right up, Damon said, swallowing his irritation. Phoebe sat in the corner booth with her crayons spread across the tabletop like treasure. She was drawing frogs again. Lately, it was always frogs. Daddy, she called out without looking up. Can we go to the library after? If we get off early, sweetheart. A bell rang as the front door opened. Damon turned and froze. Ayanna had returned. This time, her hair was loose, curling around her jaw. She wore the same blazer as before, but her eyes held something softer. She looked at him like she'd been waiting all day for this moment. You came back, he said, wiping his hands on a towel. I wasn't done talking, she replied. He gestured toward the corner. Phoebe's here. Her gaze swept over to the child and softened instantly. Then let's keep it light. Damon seated her in the booth next to Phoebe's and brought her tea without asking. She smiled when he placed the cup down. You remember, she said. I remember everything. Phoebe peeked over. Who's that? A friend, Damon replied. Phoebe crawled over the booth divider and stuck out a hand. I'm Phoebe. I'm 6.5. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Ayanna laughed, startled. No, just a visitor today. Phoebe looked skeptical. You're pretty. Daddy never brings home pretty visitors. Phoebe, Damon said, blushing. Go back to your frogs. Ayanna leaned in. She's very honest. She gets that from her mom, he replied, then caught himself. Ayanna didn't pry, just took a slow sip of tea. Do you always work this hard? She asked. Only on days ending in Y. She smiled. They fell into a rhythm. Between orders, Damon would return to her booth, and the two would talk in quiet moments, small exchanges between the clatter of dishes and hiss of the grill. Do you miss it? He asked at one point. Miss what? Your world. The one with drivers, offices, boardrooms. She looked out the rain-speckled window. Not today. Damon couldn't tell if she was being kind or truthful. Either way, it disarmed him. Later, when Phoebe yawned and curled against the vinyl seat, Damon asked, You hungry? Ayanna shook her head. No, I came to see you. His brow furrowed. Why? She held his gaze. Because I can't stop thinking about what you did, and I don't want to forget it. He said nothing. She continued. I've been in rooms filled with people who say a lot but mean very little. Then I meet you, and in 5 minutes, I feel more human than I have in 5 years. He shifted, uncertain how to respond. You didn't want anything from me, she said. That's rare. I didn't know who you were, he replied. Would it have mattered? I don't know. I didn't do it for a thank you. She nodded. That's exactly why I needed to say it in person. The diner began to empty as the rain slowed. Phoebe stirred and stretched. Ayanna stood. Let me take you both out. Damon blinked. Out? Where? Anywhere you want. We don't really do restaurants. Then we won't, she said with a smirk. We'll do bakeries. Phoebe perked up. Can we go somewhere with chocolate cake? Ayanna winked. Absolutely. 20 minutes later, the three of them squeezed into a booth at Jackson's Bake Shop, a cozy spot filled with the smell of sugar and cinnamon. Ayanna ordered hot chocolate for Phoebe, a coffee for Damon, and lemon tea for herself. They sat close, the space small and intimate. Phoebe babbled about frogs, pancakes, and a girl at school who wore glitter shoes every day. Ayanna listened like she was being told a secret. Damon watched the way Ayanna leaned in, nodding, laughing quietly. He'd expected her to pull out a phone, to scan headlines, to retreat behind a polished mask, but she didn't. She just sat there, like she belonged. After Phoebe fell asleep against Damon's side, Ayanna reached across the table, brushing his knuckles with her fingertips. You gave me life, she said softly, and I don't even know your favorite color. He blinked. Blue. Mine's dusk. He tilted his head. That's not a color. It's the sky right before it turns black, when anything feels possible. He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, something inside him eased. The bakery's warm lighting cast a golden glow over the booth. Outside, the streets glistened with rain. Inside, Damon sat with one arm resting around Phoebe's small shoulders, her head now tucked beneath his chin as she slept. Ayanna stirred her lemon tea, gaze soft and steady on the little girl. She trusts you completely, she whispered. She doesn't have much of a choice, Damon replied with a gentle smile. I'm all she's got. You're more than enough, Ayanna said. Damon lowered his eyes. Compliments weren't something he knew how to accept, especially not from someone like her. I haven't sat like this in a long time, she continued. No press, no calls, no one needing anything from me. Just silence. He glanced at her. That a good thing or a scary thing? It's unfamiliar, she admitted. But I think I like it. Damon rubbed Phoebe's back absently. She makes things simpler. Kids don't care about job titles or bank accounts. They just want you to show up. Ayanna's eyes flicked to Phoebe's crayon drawing, still clutched in one small hand. 2 smiling stick figures holding a heart. Ayanna reached across the table and slid it closer. She drew me in it, Ayanna said quietly. She does that with people she likes. I've only met her twice. Damon looked up. You don't need much time to make a difference. For a moment they just sat in silence, the world slowing around them. Then Ayanna asked, do you ever think about what your life could have been like if things had gone differently? Every night, Damon said without hesitation. She nodded. Same here. He leaned back. Let me guess. Yours was supposed to be easier. On paper, it was perfect, she said. But I never felt free. Not really. What changed? You did. That caught him off guard. Me. You didn't know who I was. You didn't ask for anything. You gave a piece of yourself and walked away. And that's the most honest thing anyone's done for me in years. Damon let the words settle. They felt like too much, and yet, just enough. I'm not a hero, he said finally. No, she replied. You're something harder to find. A decent man. He tried to look away, but her gaze held him in place. I want to see you again, she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. This isn't enough cake for you? She chuckled. I meant properly. No booths, no aprons. I don't own a suit. I'm not asking for one. He hesitated. You sure you want someone like me near someone like you? She tilted her head. Someone like me? Come on. You're, what, rich, educated? I'm also exhausted, alone, grateful. And I'm here, in a booth too small for my knees, drinking tea with a man who saved my life. He looked down, his thumb brushing Phoebe's curls. She likes you. I like her too. Damon met her eyes. And me? She smiled. I'd like to know. After walking them back to the apartment building, Ayanna lingered at the bottom of the steps as Damon carried Phoebe inside. The girl was heavy with sleep, arms around his neck, the fox clutched in one hand. A few minutes later, Damon stepped back outside, rubbing his neck. "You waited," he said. "I told you. I wasn't done talking." The street lamp flickered above them, casting a soft glow on the damp sidewalk. Ayanna stood with her arms folded, her blazer spotted with leftover drizzle. Damon stepped closer. "You didn't need to do any of this." "I know. But you did. I needed to see you. That wasn't going to change." He nodded, unsure what to say. The silence between them felt like a drawstring, pulling tighter with every heartbeat. "Do you always carry this much weight alone?" she asked. He gave a half smile. "Only since Phoebe came along. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one." Ayanna stepped forward. "Do you think we could try this again? No pressure, just another night, another cake, another conversation." Damon looked at her like he was memorizing the moment. "Yeah," he said. "I think I'd like that, my dear beautiful family. If you are still here with me, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this story a like, because what happens next will keep you at the edge of your sit." The night air clung to Damon's skin as he stood on the second-floor landing of his apartment. Inside, Phoebe was asleep beneath a faded blanket, the stuffed fox tucked under her chin, her tiny mouth parted in peaceful dreams. Outside, Ayanna leaned against the railing, arms crossed, eyes tilted toward the sky. The city hummed below, but up here it was quiet, just the faint whir of passing cars and the distant bark of a dog. Damon stepped beside her. Neither of them spoke right away. "You could have left," he murmured. "I didn't want to. Not used to women sticking around. Then maybe it's time that changed." He glanced at her, lips tugging slightly. "You always this stubborn?" Ayanna smiled. "Only when something feels worth it." She turned her gaze to him then. The way her eyes held his made Damon feel like she was looking into more than his face, like she saw every scar, every bruise beneath his smile. "I don't have much," he said after a beat. "No savings, no car. Most days I wonder if I'm doing right by Phoebe." Ayanna stepped closer. "You gave me life when you had every reason not to. That's worth more than anything you could have put in a bank." Their bodies were just inches apart now. Damon could smell the faint trace of her perfume, earthy, subtle, warm. Her fingers brushed his forearm. "You don't have to prove anything to me." He exhaled. "You scare me." "Why?" "Because this feels different." "It is." She lifted a hand to his cheek, the pad of her thumb tracing the line of his jaw. "I should go," she whispered, though her feet didn't move. "You don't have to." A breath passed between them. Then she leaned in. The kiss was unhurried, quiet, sure, and full of unspoken truths. Damon felt it deep in his chest, as if something dormant had awakened. Her lips were soft, her hand steady against his face. He kissed her back, hesitant at first, then fully, his fingers resting at her waist, grounding himself in her warmth. It wasn't the kiss of strangers, or even of new lovers. It was the kiss of two souls that had been walking alone for too long, and suddenly, finally, had found each other. When they pulled apart, their foreheads rested together. "This is insane," he murmured. "Maybe," she said softly. "But it's also real." A car passed in the street below. Neither of them looked away. He tucked a curl behind her ear. "I haven't done this in a long time." She smiled. "Then let's go slow. I'm not going anywhere." A cool breeze passed over them, and Ayanna stepped back, hugging her arms to her chest. "I should let you rest," she said. "Phoebe's going to be up early." He nodded, not wanting her to leave, but also not wanting to rush what was unfolding between them. She descended the stairs slowly. At the sidewalk, she looked up at him once more. "Good night, Damon." He watched her until she turned the corner and disappeared into the dark. Inside, Phoebe stirred. "Daddy?" she mumbled. "I'm here," he whispered, settling beside her. But his mind stayed outside, where a woman with dusk in her eyes had kissed him like he mattered. The apartment smelled of lavender and old wood. Damon had scrubbed the kitchen earlier that day, wiped down counters, lit 2 candles, and cleared the stack of bills off the table. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, quiet, real. Phoebe was spending the night at her best friend's. Damon had kissed her forehead, handed off her backpack, and promised pancakes in the morning. Now, he waited by the window, glancing outside every few seconds. Then her car pulled up. Ayanna stepped out without a coat, the breeze tugging lightly at her blouse. She walked up the cracked steps with the same grace she brought into every space. Damon opened the door before she could knock. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." They stood for a moment, suspended in silence. Then she crossed the threshold. It was the first time she'd seen where he lived, really lived. The small kitchen that doubled as a dining room, the worn couch, the bookshelf that leaned slightly to one side. There were drawings taped to the wall made by Phoebe, colorful rainbows and stick figures with hearts between them. Ayanna turned slowly. "It's warm in here." He offered a smile. "That's the radiator. It only works when it wants to." She laughed. "Then tonight must be special." Damon stepped closer. "I didn't light the candles for you, by the way. I just like the smell." She leaned in slightly. "You always this honest?" "Only when I'm nervous. You don't have to be." "I know," he said. "But I am." She touched his arm. "Me too." The space between them disappeared. He kissed her like he'd been waiting years, not just for her, but for the feeling, for the warmth, for the permission to want something more than just survival. Her hands slid up his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. He led her to the kitchen, not because it was romantic, but because it was home. The candlelight flickered off the countertop. Ayanna turned, leaning against it, her breath quickening as Damon pressed his forehead to hers. "You can tell me to stop," he whispered. "Don't you dare." She pulled him in, her mouth finding his, deeper this time. Urgent, hungry. He slid the blazer off her shoulders, his hands tracing the slope of her arms. She wore a black silk camisole that clung to her skin like it belonged there. He kissed her collarbone, the space behind her ear, the spot just beneath her jaw that made her shiver. Her fingers slipped under his shirt, palms warm against his skin. They moved together without speaking. Clothes fell in soft thuds. They didn't make it to the bedroom. He lifted her gently, setting her on the edge of the couch, their limbs entangled, their breaths synchronized. She reached for him, nails grazing his back, lips parted in a silent invitation. Damon kissed her shoulder, then lower, slowly, reverently, memorizing every inch. When he entered her, it wasn't rushed. It was deliberate, anchored. Ayanna gasped, her arms wrapping around him, pulling him closer. He moved slowly, his hands in her hair, his mouth at her neck. Their bodies spoke in ways words never could, matching pace, pressure, need. She arched against him. He whispered her name like it was a promise. When she cried out, it wasn't loud, but it was enough to fill the room with meaning. He followed, burying his face in her shoulder, trembling. They stayed like that for a long time, skin on skin, tangled in warmth. Eventually, she exhaled. "I've never felt like this." "Like what?" "Safe." Damon stroked her back. "I'm no shield. You don't have to be. You're just you. And that's everything." She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I don't want to go back tonight," she whispered. "Then stay." She looked up. "Are you sure?" He kissed her once more. Completely. The morning light slipped in through the half-drawn curtain, casting soft streaks across the floor. Damon stirred first, blinking slowly as the scent of lavender from the candle still lingered faintly in the air. Ayanna lay beside him on the couch, her head resting on his chest, one arm draped across his waist. Her hair had come loose in the night, falling gently over her cheek. She looked peaceful, lighter, as if some invisible burden had loosened its grip on her. He didn't move. He just breathed her in. Outside, birds chirped in the tree by the window. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared, but it felt far away. For the first time in what felt like years, Damon wasn't thinking about the next bill, the next shift, or how to stretch a grocery list. He was here, with her, and it was enough. Ayanna stirred, her fingers flexing against his skin. "You're awake," she murmured. "I didn't want to be." She looked up, her voice still husky from sleep. "Me either." They stared at each other for a beat, a lazy smile tugging at her lips. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You okay?" She nodded. Better than okay. Ayanna sat up slowly, stretching, the blanket slipping down her back. Damon reached for her hand, grounding her again. "Are you sure this wasn't a mistake?" he asked quietly. She turned, eyes clear. "No, not even for a second." He relaxed. Ayanna stood, pulled her shirt over her head, and walked toward the kitchen. Damon sat up, watching her move like she'd been here 100 mornings before. "You like coffee?" he called out. "I like whatever you make." "That's dangerous," he smirked. I burned toast. "I already trust you with major organs. I think I can risk a cup of coffee." He laughed, rising to join her. They stood side by side in the kitchen, mugs in hand. Damon leaned against the counter, watching her stir cream into her cup. "You said last night you feel safe," he said. "I did. Can I ask why?" Ayanna leaned on her elbows, turning to him. "Because you don't want anything from me. Not a name, not a title, not a seat at a table. You just see me. That's rare in my world. I see someone who's been through a lot. But you still showed up anyway. That's because you gave me a reason to." Damon sipped from his mug. "You know, Phoebe's going to have questions." Ayanna smiled. "I like her questions. She asks a lot." "Good. I owe her answers." That afternoon, Phoebe came bursting through the front door in glitter sneakers and a juice pouch in hand. "Daddy, guess what? We played frog tag and I won." Damon scooped her up. "I'm not surprised." Ayanna appeared from the kitchen doorway, and Phoebe froze mid-wiggle. "You stayed." She gasped. "I did," Ayanna replied, kneeling down. Phoebe narrowed her eyes, then whispered, "Did you sleep on our couch?" Damon coughed. Ayanna grinned. "I might have." Phoebe clapped. "Yay, that means you're staying for pancakes." Damon glanced at Ayanna. "You sure you're ready for that kind of commitment?" She placed a hand on Phoebe's shoulder. "Absolutely." Later, the three of them sat at the kitchen table, sticky syrup puddled across mismatched plates, laughter filling the small apartment. Ayanna told Phoebe about growing up in California chasing seagulls at the beach. Phoebe, in turn, shared the intricate details of her imaginary frog kingdom and why pancakes must never be folded. Damon listened, amused and amazed at how seamlessly Ayanna fit. It felt like she'd been part of their rhythm all along. After clearing the plates, Damon pulled Ayanna aside while Phoebe colored in the living room. "Hey," he said gently. "About last night, I don't want to assume anything." She stepped closer. "Neither do I. So, where do we go from here?" Ayanna met his gaze. "We don't go back." He nodded, relief flashing in his eyes. She continued, "I don't know what's next, but I know I want to find out, with you, and with her." He took her hand. "Then we'll figure it out, one small step at a time." The first headline appeared 3 days later. "Heiress linked to single father from Newark." It wasn't flashy, just a small article buried halfway down the entertainment site, but it spread fast. Too fast. By the next morning, photos of Ayanna exiting the bakery with Damon and Phoebe were everywhere. A grainy zoomed-in shot of them sharing cake, Damon smiling, Phoebe mid-law. It wasn't unflattering, but it was invasive. At Marlowe's diner, phones buzzed. Customers stared. One waitress wouldn't stop whispering. Damon felt it the moment he walked in, eyes heavy on him like stones. By lunch, 2 men in suits showed up outside. They didn't eat. They just watched. That afternoon, Ayanna sat in a high-backed chair in her father's private office, surrounded by men in gray ties and forced courtesy. Her father, Julius Cross, sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone. "You've been seen," he said flatly. "I'm aware. With a man who has no pedigree, no financial standing, a child, and a past." She folded her arms. "He has a name. Damon Arledge. Do you know what this does to our company? He saved my life." Julius leaned forward. "And now you're dragging his into ours. That's not gratitude. That's recklessness. I'm not asking for your approval. You should be. Because the board won't sit quietly while you parade a working-class stranger around like a badge of rebellion. I'm not rebelling. I'm living." He stood. "You're compromising everything we've built." She rose too. Then maybe it was never built on the right things. The room fell quiet. Julius spoke again, voice lower. "Do you love him?" She didn't blink. "Yes." He exhaled, as though winded. "Then you'd better prepare for war." Back in South Newark, Damon was getting calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Reporters, journalists, even a podcast producer who offered him $5,000 to talk about the romance. He turned them all down. Then came the envelope, delivered by courier. Thick cream paper, gold trim. A letter inside, printed neatly on cross-Atlantic letterhead. "Mr. Arledge, your presence in Miss Ayanna Cross's personal life poses significant reputational risk. We are prepared to offer financial compensation in exchange for a clean and immediate disassociation." A generous sum. Discretion is expected. There was no signature, just a business card clipped to the edge. Damon read it twice, then tore it in half. That night, he sat on the couch with Phoebe asleep beside him, her feet dangling off the edge. He stared at the wall, at the bills stacked on the corner table, at his phone buzzing again, another media inquiry. He felt small, like everything he'd tried to protect was slipping through his hands. The knock on the door came softly. He opened it to find Ayanna, wind-tossed and flushed. "I saw the coverage," she said. "I figured." She stepped inside. "My father sent you something, didn't he?" Damon didn't answer. His silence was enough. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't think it would happen this fast." "I'm not embarrassed," he said quietly. "But I am overwhelmed. I should have protected you better." He shook his head. "You don't owe me that." She stepped closer. I want to stand beside you, not in front of you." Damon studied her. "Are you sure? They think this is about status, but they don't understand. You gave me life, and now I want to build one, with you." He looked down. "I'm just a guy with a kid and a diner job." She lifted his chin. "And I'm just a woman trying to feel something real for once. Don't let them decide what that's worth." He kissed her then, not out of passion, but out of certainty. Ayanna whispered against his lips, "We'll face this together." The boardroom of Cross Atlantic Holdings was a tower of glass and steel, high above the city, spotless and sharp, but beneath the polished surface, tension ran deep. Ayanna sat at the end of the table, not as a daughter this time, but as vice chair. Her father sat directly opposite, arms folded. One board member spoke first. "Miss Cross, your recent appearances in the media have raised concern." Another added, "It's not just tabloid buzz anymore. Investors are nervous." A third cleared his throat. "The man you've been seen with, Damon Arledge, has no public profile, no background in corporate environments. He's unvetted." Ayanna leaned forward. "He's not a risk. He's a man who saved my life." A few exchanged glances. "We're not questioning your gratitude," said the finance director, "but it's the image of the company." She cut in. "You mean it's about appearances? Optics matter." Ayanna stood. "Then maybe you should look more closely." The room stilled. "I've spent years behind this desk, in this building, following rules made to protect a brand. But when I was dying, not one of you visited me. Not one of you asked how I was. Damon didn't know my name, my worth, or my resume. He gave me a part of himself, no questions asked." Her father watched, unreadable. She continued, "And now you want me to trade that kind of integrity for clean headlines? I won't." Another voice chimed in, one of the younger members. "It's not just about you. We represent shareholders." "Then tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them your vice chair fell in love with the man who reminded her what being alive actually means." The silence that followed wasn't polite. It was stunned. And then her father finally spoke. "You're prepared to risk everything for this?" Ayanna turned to him. "No. I'm prepared to fight for something real. And if that costs me everything, at least it's a price worth paying." Hours later, Damon was stocking napkins behind the counter at Marlowe's when Ayanna walked in, her heels echoing against the tile. She looked different, freer. He wiped his hands and stepped out. "You okay?" he asked. "I just told a room full of men that I'm choosing you." He blinked. "How'd that go?" She smiled. "Let's just say one of them resigned." Damon laughed, shaking his head. "You didn't have to do that." "I did." She stepped close, lowering her voice. "I won't let them shame you for being good." He looked down. "They're not wrong, though. I don't belong in your world." "You're wrong. It's your world too now. If you want it. I only want one thing." She waited. "You," he said. That evening, they sat on the diner's roof, legs dangling over the edge, city lights blinking in the distance. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" Damon asked. "Every day," she replied. "But then I remember, sometimes the only way to change the world is to stay in it." He glanced at her. "You're brave. I'm just tired of pretending I'm not." He slid his hand over hers. "Then stop pretending. With me, you don't have to." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Below them, the world kept spinning. But up here, something else had started. Saturday mornings in Damon's apartment were usually slow and quiet, cereal bowls clinking, cartoons humming in the background, and Phoebe singing off-key as she dressed her stuffed animals. But today, the mood was different. Phoebe was sitting on the living room floor, her markers spread everywhere. Ayanna sat cross-legged beside her, their heads bent close together. "See," Phoebe explained, "this is me, this is Daddy, and this—" She hesitated. "This is you." Ayanna blinked at the crayon drawing. "You gave me purple hair." "Because purple is my favorite," Phoebe said confidently. "And only people I love get purple hair." Ayanna's voice caught. "That's really special." Phoebe tilted her head. "Are you going to stay?" Ayanna met Damon's eyes across the room. He leaned in the doorway, silent. "Because you can," Phoebe added. "You don't even have to pay rent." "We don't got much room, but Daddy says people matter more than space." Ayanna smiled, fighting tears. "Then I'd love to stay." Phoebe crawled into her lap like she'd always belonged there. And in that moment, Ayanna realized that this wasn't a borrowed life. It was hers too, if she chose it. Later that day, Damon stepped outside to toss the trash and found a man leaning on a car across the street. Slick suit, dark glasses. He didn't belong to the neighborhood. "You're Damon Arledge?" the man asked. "Depends who's asking." The man pulled off his glasses. "You've got everyone talking." Quiet guy from Newark, turns down money, keeps the girl. Damon's jaw tensed. "You here to make another offer?" "No, just a warning. People don't like surprises, especially when it threatens their control." Damon stepped forward. "Tell whoever sent you. She's not theirs to control." The man smirked. "You're not afraid." "Terrified," Damon said. "But I'm still not walking away." The man climbed into the car. "Then you'd better hold on tight." That night, as they curled on the couch, Ayanna rested her head against Damon's chest while Phoebe slept sprawled out between them. "You okay?" Damon asked quietly. "I'm starting to understand something," she whispered. "What's that?" "When the world tries to scare you off, that usually means you're exactly where you're supposed to be." He nodded. "Funny. I was thinking the same thing." She looked at Phoebe, who clutched both their hands in her sleep. "This is the kind of love I never knew I needed." "You had everything," he said. "Why me?" She met his eyes. "Because everything I had was loud, but you made me feel quiet, like I could just breathe again." The rooftop of Ayanna's penthouse was quiet, bathed in soft gold from string lights stretched overhead. The sky above was clear, stars scattered loosely like reminders that not everything had to make sense to be beautiful. Damon stood at the edge, hands in his pockets, looking out at the skyline. From here, the city looked manageable, peaceful even. Behind him, the sliding glass door opened. Ayanna stepped out barefoot, wrapped in one of his old sweatshirts, hair tousled from sleep. "You're brooding," she said, walking to him. "I'm thinking, dangerous." He smiled faintly. She slid her arms around his waist from behind and pressed her cheek to his back. "Tell me." He placed his hands over hers. "I keep wondering when this will disappear, when someone will remind me I'm just a guy from the wrong zip code." She pulled him gently to face her. "No one gets to decide where your worth ends." He studied her face, the depth in her eyes, the steady certainty she carried now. "I never saw this coming," he said. "Neither did I." They stood like that for a long moment, swaying slightly in the quiet night air. Then she broke the silence. "I want something, name it. A home, not a house, a home, a family. This doesn't feel temporary to me." He took a slow breath. "It's not." She searched his face. "Then let's make it permanent." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small carved wooden box. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes already filling. "I didn't plan a speech," he said. "Didn't write anything down. Just knew I didn't want to ask you in front of strangers or in some spotlight. I wanted to do it where we both feel real." He knelt slowly. "I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want Phoebe to grow up with you at her side. I want twins if you're serious," he added, trying to lighten the weight of the moment. "And I want all the noise outside to stay out there because in here, with you and her, I finally feel quiet." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, a smooth band with a single stone, a sapphire deep blue like a late evening sky. Ayanna knelt with him, tears streaming. "Yes," she whispered, before he could even say the words. She kissed him, the box slipping between them, laughter and tears mixing in the space only they occupied. Later that night, Wrapped in sheets and moonlight, she rested against his chest. "I think this is what peace feels like," she said softly. He brushed his fingers through her hair. "Then let's hold on to it, as long as we can." The wedding wasn't held in a cathedral or ballroom. It didn't need chandeliers or security escorts. It happened beneath a canopy of sunlit trees on a small patch of land just outside the city, a quiet place Ayanna had visited once as a girl and never forgotten. They didn't send out invitations. They made phone calls. They kept it intimate. 30 people. No headlines, no press, just love. Phoebe stood at the front in a pink dress, holding a basket of petals. Her hair was braided into 2 long ropes down her back, and she grinned at every guest like she was the star of the show. Damon stood in front of the wooden archway, adjusting the collar of his black suit. It had been tailored, not by a designer, but by Ayanna herself. She'd taken a sewing class secretly on weekends just to learn how. He glanced at Phoebe, then up at the aisle, and froze. There she was. Ayanna walked barefoot down the aisle, her gown flowing like water. It wasn't white, but cream, hand-woven from linen. No diamonds, no veil. Just a small sapphire sewn at the back, near her shoulder blades, the color of dusk. The crowd rose, but Damon didn't notice anything except her. She smiled when she reached him. "You clean up well." "You're late," he teased. "You're lucky I came at all." They held hands as the officiant began to speak, but neither really heard the words. They were lost in each other. When it came time for vows, Damon went first. "I never thought I'd get this again," he said. "A chance to love, to build something lasting. I gave a part of myself to save your life, but you gave me a new one in return. I promise to never let you wonder if you're loved. Not for a second." "Then, Ayanna, I've lived surrounded by people who called me powerful, but I've never felt stronger than I do with your hand in mine. You remind me who I am beneath all the layers, and you've taught me what it means to belong, not to a place, but to a person. You and Phoebe are my home." Phoebe sniffled loudly from the front row, holding her petal basket to her chest. The officiant chuckled. "You may now kiss." They did, and the world seemed to quiet itself around them. After the ceremony, they ate under string lights and shared cupcakes from a bakery Damon couldn't afford, but Ayanna insisted he let her choose. Phoebe danced with both of them, barefoot in the grass, hair wild, face glowing. Ayanna's father didn't come, but he sent a letter. "You are no longer a cross by obligation. You are a cross by choice. If this is your happiness, then may you hold it with both hands. You've reminded me what legacy should mean." Damon read it silently, then tucked it into Ayanna's palm. She didn't cry, but she held his hand tighter that night. As the sun dipped low and the trees cast long shadows across the field, Damon lifted Phoebe into his arms. She rested her head on his shoulder, already dozing. Ayanna stood beside him, her hand resting gently over his chest, where her heartbeat once found a second chance. They were a family now, not because of vows, not because of rings, but because they chose each other, every single day. The lake house wasn't extravagant. It didn't need marble floors or imported tiles. It had creaky floorboards, sun-stained windows, and a wraparound porch that overlooked still water, silver in the mornings, gold at dusk. Ayanna had fallen in love with the property the second she saw it. Damon didn't even need convincing. "This place breathes," she said. "It's not just a house, it's waiting to be filled." And fill it they did. Phoebe had her own room, painted soft blue with glow-in-the-dark stars pasted to the ceiling. The backyard sloped into a tiny dock where Damon taught her how to fish with a toy rod. Ayanna spent mornings barefoot in the kitchen, flipping pancakes while music drifted through an old radio speaker. There were bookshelves, plants, scribbled art taped to the fridge. It was quiet here, but not lonely. It was the kind of quiet they'd fought for. One morning, Ayanna stood on the porch, hands wrapped around a mug of herbal tea. She watched as Damon lifted wooden planks onto a small frame he'd started building under the maple tree. He looked up. "You're staring. You're building a treehouse with no blueprint. I've got one." "Where?" "In here." He tapped his chest. She laughed. "You sure that's reliable? Worked out okay when I followed it to you." She came down the steps, bare feet brushing the grass. "Need help?" "You're already doing enough just standing there." "You know," she said, "some people hire people for this kind of thing." He reached out, pulled her in by the waist. "Some people don't get to see their wife barefoot in the yard, teasing them about their hammer skills." "Wife," she echoed, smiling. "That still sounds surreal." Get used to it. Later that evening, the three of them sat on the dock with their feet in the water. Phoebe had caught a small frog and insisted it be named Pancake the Third. Damon tossed pebbles into the lake while Ayanna braided Phoebe's hair. "Do you ever miss the city?" he asked. Ayanna considered. "Sometimes. But then I hear birds in the morning instead of sirens, and I watch you two laughing over burnt toast, and I know I'm exactly where I should be." Phoebe yawned, her head tipping against Ayanna's arm. "Time for bed," Damon said. "But the stars are coming out." Phoebe protested. "They'll still be here tomorrow." She stood with a dramatic sigh. "Fine. But Pancake the Third gets to sleep in my bed." "I'm not arguing with a frog," Ayanna said, lifting her. Damon watched them walk ahead, hand in hand. He stood there for a moment longer, looking out over the water. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a storm waiting to break. It felt like morning light. Slow, sure, and steady. Damon stood in the kitchen, hands deep in a bowl of pancake batter, when Ayanna walked in wearing his flannel shirt over her nightgown. She moved slowly, one hand resting lightly over her stomach. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, but something in her smile made him pause. "Sit down," she said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her back pocket and placing it on the counter. "What's this?" he asked, wiping his hands. "Just open it." He did. 2 ultrasound images, side by side. It took a moment for it to register. Then his eyes widened. "You're pregnant?" he whispered. She nodded, lips pressed tight with emotion. His breath caught. "And there's 2 twins," she said, her voice shaking. "We're having twins." Damon leaned against the counter, eyes locked on the images. His knees went weak. He didn't speak. He just dropped to them. Kneeling in front of her, his hands reached gently for her belly. He kissed it, once, twice, and then laid his forehead against it. A tear slid down his cheek. "I never thought," he whispered, "I'd get to do this again." She cupped his face, stroking his jaw. "You gave life once, Damon," she said. "Now you get to do it again. But this time, they'll call you Daddy from the very beginning." Phoebe sat at the dining table later that night, swinging her feet and spooning cereal out of a giant bowl. Damon cleared his throat. "We need to tell you something." She squinted. "You broke the washing machine again?" "No." "Did you eat the last cookie?" "Also no." Ayanna smiled. "You're going to be a big sister." Phoebe blinked, then blinked again. "To one baby?" "No," Damon said. 2. Phoebe's jaw dropped. 2? Like, at the same time? That's what twins are. She screamed. "I'm gonna be a big sister to 2 babies?" Damon laughed as she launched herself across the room and hugged Ayanna's belly. "Hi, babies," she whispered. "I'm your big sister. I'll protect you and let you play with my toys. Except Mr. Fox, that's non-negotiable." Ayanna knelt to hug her. "That's more than fair." Over the following weeks, life began to shift. The nursery was painted a soft green, with Damon building the cribs by hand in the garage. Ayanna began to slow down, her movements careful, her expression softer. Neighbors dropped off congratulations cards and tiny clothes. The diner crowd even sent over a casserole. The once lonely man from Newark now had a growing family, a home by the water, and a future full of voices yet to be born. One afternoon, as rain tapped gently on the windows, Ayanna sat on the couch with her feet propped up. Damon rubbed her ankles, smiling at how peaceful she looked. "You tired?" he asked. "Only all the time." He kissed her knee. "You're beautiful. I'm round. You're mine." She closed her eyes. "I like that part the most." Phoebe peeked into the room holding a picture she'd drawn, 4 stick figures under a sun, 2 of them holding baby rattles. "Is that us?" Damon asked. "Yep. That's Mommy, that's you, that's me, and those are the babies." He squinted. "Why do the babies have mohawks?" "Because mohawks are cool." I can't argue with that. Late one night, Damon sat on the porch staring out at the lake. Ayanna stepped outside, wrapped in a shawl, her belly full and round. He looked at her, eyes full. "What?" she asked. "I just keep thinking, how did I get here?" She came to him, settling into the wooden chair beside his. "You gave a part of yourself to save someone you didn't even know, and the universe gave you something bigger in return." He reached for her hand. "I didn't think I'd ever feel whole again." "You don't have to. You just have to feel loved. I do. Then that's enough. They sat there until the sky darkened and the stars blinked awake, holding the quiet between them like it was sacred. 6 months later, the hospital was no longer a place of fear or memory. It had become something else, a symbol of rebirth, of second chances, of full circles. Damon stepped into the familiar corridor, a baby carrier in each hand. One held a sleeping boy named Elias, the other a tiny girl named Haven. Phoebe walked proudly beside him, holding a bouquet of paper flowers she'd made herself. "Daddy," she whispered, "are we visiting the place where the babies came from?" "Sort of," he replied. "We're visiting the place where everything started." They reached the nurse's station. The woman behind the desk looked up, eyes widening with recognition. "Well, I'll be—" She stood. "Damon Arledge?" He smiled. "Still here." She came around the desk, wiping her hands on her scrubs. "And these are the twins?" "Elias and Haven," Damon said, carefully placing the carriers on the bench. "And you must be Phoebe," the nurse said. "I'm the big sister," Phoebe announced. "I help with diapers and burping. Sometimes I sing frog songs to them." The nurse laughed. "That sounds very helpful." Damon handed her a small envelope. Inside was a photograph, Ayanna holding both babies, Phoebe beside her, all three of them glowing under soft morning light on their porch. "I wanted you to have this," Damon said. "You were the first person to tell her my name. You started it all." The nurse's eyes misted. "I remember that night," she asked with tears in her voice. "Something told me she needed to know. You were right." She turned the photo over. Written on the back in neat handwriting, "You gave her my name. Now they carry ours. D.A." Later in the hospital garden, Damon sat on a bench, watching the fountain trickle steadily. Ayanna joined him, Phoebe skipping in the grass nearby. "You good?" she asked, gently bouncing Elias against her chest. "I am," Damon said. "I needed to come back here." "I know." He looked at her, eyes searching. "Do you ever regret it, choosing me?" She didn't blink. "Never." He glanced around. "This place used to feel so heavy. Now it's where my story begins." She leaned on his shoulder. "Mine too." That afternoon, they visited the NICU where the twins had been born just weeks earlier. Nurses lit up when they saw them. Ayanna donated new equipment in the twins' names. Damon met two young fathers waiting on benches the way he once had. He sat beside one of them, a guy in worn jeans and tired eyes. "First one?" Damon asked. The man nodded. "Girl, due next week." "I'm scared." Damon smiled faintly. "Good. That means you care. What if I mess it up?" "You will," Damon said honestly. "We all do. But you keep showing up. That's what matters." The man looked at him. "Thanks." Damon stood, patting his shoulder. "You've already won half the battle. You're here." The rest of the evening passed in simple ways. A stop for ice cream. A walk through the old neighborhood. Phoebe rode on Damon's shoulders, tossing gummy bears into her mouth from above. "Hey, Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart. You think the babies will like frogs?" He laughed. "They'll love them, especially if you're teaching them." She grinned. "Good, because I've already made up 3 frog lullabies." Ayanna looked up at him from beside the stroller. "We might be in trouble." "Best kind," he said, reaching for her hand. That night, after the twins had been put down and Phoebe had fallen asleep mid-sentence, Damon stepped out onto the porch alone. He looked up at the stars, then down at the letter in his hand. It was the one he'd started writing a year ago and never finished. To Maya. He opened it now, and with the porch light buzzing faintly above him, he began to write again. "Dear Maya, I don't know if you can hear me, but I talk to you more often than I admit. Phoebe is everything you would have wanted her to be. Kind, funny, fearless. She talks to frogs, still sleeps with that old fox. And sometimes when she smiles, I see you in her so clearly that it stops me cold. I used to think I could never find peace again after losing you. But then a woman walked into my life needing something I didn't even know I still had left to give. I gave her my kidney. She gave me everything else. Her name is Ayanna. She's strong in a quiet way. Fierce, but gentle. You would have liked her. She doesn't try to fill your place. She makes room beside it. Phoebe calls her mommy Ayanna sometimes. Other times, just Ayanna. Either way, it's hers to give. And the twins. Maya, we have twins. A boy and a girl. Elias, Haven, I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but for the first time, I'm not afraid of it. You'd be proud of what we've built. You're still a part of it. Always, Damon. He folded the letter, slid it into the old tin box beneath the porch stairs where he kept things that mattered. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt whole. The lake was still that night. A cool wind rustled through the trees, and the moon carved a silver path across the surface of the water. Inside the house, the twins slept in their cribs, the softest breaths rising and falling beneath muslin blankets. Phoebe was tucked into bed, one arm around her fox, the other sprawled across her pillow. Ayanna stepped out onto the back deck, wrapped in a soft robe, holding a folded piece of paper. She found Damon sitting on the steps, barefoot, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the sky. "You didn't come to bed," she said gently. He looked up and reached for her hand. Didn't want to sleep just yet. She sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke, just the distant sound of crickets and the hum of life settling around them. Then she handed him the letter. "What's this?" he asked. "My turn," she said. Damon opened it slowly, the familiar curve of her handwriting drawing his eyes in. "Dear Damon, I've been writing this in my head since the first night you kissed me. I didn't know it then, but something shifted inside me that day, like a part of my heart remembered itself. You didn't see wealth when you looked at me. You didn't see power. You saw a woman, tired, scared, fragile beneath all the armor. You never asked for anything, not even when you gave up a piece of yourself for me, but you gave me more than life. You gave me laughter. You gave me Sunday mornings in pajamas. You gave me late-night ice cream runs, first cries, quiet tears, new names. You gave me something that money never could, peace. And when the world tried to tear us apart with headlines, threats, assumptions, you stood still. You told me I could be loved without expectation, and I believed you. That belief saved me again. I look at Phoebe, and I see the little girl I never got to be. I look at our twins, and I see the future we built out of nothing but faith. And when I look at you, I see home forever, Ayanna. I don't know what I did to deserve you," he whispered. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You showed up." They sat in silence as the wind moved through the trees like a lullaby. "Do you think we'll always have this?" she asked. "No," he said. "I think we'll have hard days, sleepless nights, times we don't get it right." She tilted her head up. "But I also think," he continued, "that we'll never stop choosing each other, and that's what makes it forever." She smiled. "You always know what to say." "No," he said. "I just finally have something worth saying." The next morning, the twins woke crying in unison, tiny voices echoing through the house like a well-timed duet. Damon and Ayanna met in the hallway, bleary-eyed but smiling. "You get Elias, I'll take Haven?" she asked. "Deal." They scooped their babies into their arms, shushing and rocking until the cries turned into soft coos. Phoebe padded in, moments later, hair wild and arms full of stuffed animals. "They were loud," she mumbled. "They're babies," Damon replied. "I know," she sighed. "Still love them, though." Ayanna kissed her forehead. "You're the best big sister." "I know that, too." Later that afternoon, the family took a walk around the lake. Phoebe skipped ahead, throwing breadcrumbs to ducks. Ayanna pushed the double stroller slowly, watching Damon walk beside her. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous." She nudged him. "Maybe we do something with all this." He looked at her. "All what?" "This story, what we've learned, the second chances, the healing. You want to go public?" "No, I want to help others like us. Start a foundation for organ donors, for widowed parents, for families starting from scratch." Damon considered. "That actually sounds incredible. We could call it the Arledge Cross Fund." He smirked. "Sounds expensive. Sounds meaningful." He stopped and kissed her forehead. "Let's do it." That night, Phoebe curled up between them, her legs draped over Damon's thigh, her head on Ayanna's shoulder. "She fell asleep during the bedtime story again," Ayanna whispered. "Because you read in that slow, serious voice. It's soothing. It's boring." She smiled. She'd disagree. Damon looked around the room, bookshelves, paintings, toys, the sound of two babies breathing in the next room. "You ever think about how far we've come?" he asked. "All the time. I wouldn't change a thing. Me either." They turned off the light, and the room faded into quiet. But the story didn't end. Because stories like theirs never do. They live on, in each morning kiss, each whispered laugh, each child's hand reaching for a parent's. They live on in the people who love fiercely, even after loss. In the ones who give without knowing what they'll receive. In the hearts that choose hope again and again. Hey, dear beloved family, before you go, take a moment to breathe this story in. A man with nothing gave everything he had, his body, his time, his heart, without ever asking for anything in return. And in doing so, he found something none of us are guaranteed in this life. Love that stays, family that grows, and a purpose that heals. Let this be your reminder, the greatest gifts often come quietly. Through pain, through patience, through the choices we make when no one is watching. Damon didn't have wealth. He didn't wear a cape. He wasn't loud. But he showed up. For his daughter. For a stranger. And eventually for himself. And Ayanna? She had it all on paper. But it wasn't until she lost control, until she let herself feel vulnerable, open, real, that she finally found the kind of love that money can't buy. Together, they didn't just build a home. They built a legacy of grace. If this story moved you even just a little, if it made you smile, cry, reflect, or hope, I ask just one thing. Please like this video. It tells YouTube and the world that stories like these matter. Leave a comment. Tell us, would you ever give everything to a stranger like Damon did? Do you believe love like this still exists? I read every comment. And your words inspire future stories. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that good people still exist. That love is not always loud, but it's always powerful. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Love in Twilights is more than just a channel. It's a space where stories become mirrors, where emotions have a home, and where hope is always just one play button away. If you want more uplifting stories about second chances, found families, and love that defies the odds, hit that bell icon too. That way, you'll never miss a moment that just might change your day or your heart. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we build them together. Thank you for being here. From my heart to yours, until the next twilight. Keep loving, keep believing, and keep choosing hope.